which I knew a little bit about, but it's totally different when you met directly the people. So it's much nicer, and you understand what are the concepts you work with, how you try to develop your profession, and how you develop as well this education and training strategy, which I think is very important because it's helping to improve the quality of interpretation on a changing world. And as you could see here, that's a little bit the title of my presentation. So what are the heritage skills in a changing world? I will try to talk about this. Of course, I will do a small presentation about the Charter project. That's the reason why Patrick invites me. Also, a little bit, very short, of course, to explain where I'm coming from, because that maybe could easier for you to understand what is my point of view. And after that, what I will do is mainly talk a little bit about some of the Charter contributions connected to what we're doing here. I will talk about the key drivers of change in the field of cultural heritage, and finally we'll have some last slides with open questions to you in order to reflect about what are the key issues on this topic. So that's a little bit the outline of my presentation. The Charter project is a very large consortium. We are 47 institutions in Europe. So it's huge for me. It's a lot of work just to coordinate all the different points of view. We are, for one side, have the education and training group of people, so universities and training sectors. We are at, oh, I don't know, something wrong. Yeah. There is as well representation from the industry, from the production sector, both public and private sector. We are as well people coming from the public bodies, so the institutions, the governments. We have several National Institute of Heritage of different European countries among our group of people. And of course, we have as well the representation of the professionals, because we have among our members networks like ICOMOS, ICOM, and also NEMO, or the European Association of Conservators and Restorers, and so on and so on. So in a way, it's the NEMO. So that's why you can see here the places in Europe that we host ourselves, but you see a circle, because the networks are everywhere. They're not located in a place like Interpret Europe. Interpret Europe is not hosted in a specific place, but covers the whole continent. So this is a blueprint. We have blueprints on different industries, from the construction industry to the tourism industry and so on. This one is specifically on cultural heritage. And what we try to do, and that's a little bit the mission, is try to analyze the gaps between the new needs of the industry, the new skills demanded by the sector, by the professionals, by the society, and the education and training providers. How we can fill this gap in between. That is the main issue. There are other factors which are connected to this mission, but this is the most important one of the Charter project. So the project has had different phases. So we started with doing research on the job market, research on the typology of professionals that are needed, about the education and training offer. Also, we did a lot of regional ecosystem analysis. So we analyzed, because Europe is very diverse, not the same what happens in Västra Götaland in Sweden, or what happens in Alentejo in the south of Portugal, or what can happen in Sibiu in the Transylvanian Romania. So the situation is very diverse. So it was important to understand how this means in different ecosystems. And we also analyzed from the point of view of specific issues, like how digitalization is affecting the field, how the the war and other risks in Europe are affecting, or we have to develop new skills in relation to these challenges. So this a little bit is what the project is about. We did research, now we are in the phases of building the strategic recommendations, and the final goal is to build an alliance among professionals, among providers, among educators and trainers, in order to be able to continue thinking about the new skills, because society is changing so fast, so we need to update ourselves. And that's a little bit the idea of this project. So I stop here about introducing the project, about where I'm coming. So I'm an economist, I'm not an interpreter. I'm an economist working in the field of culture. So I have all my life doing research on the different cultural sectors, trying to understand how the market works, how governmental policies, so how the cultural policies react to that, because my department is in the Department of Public Economy, so we always have this analysis of the public sector, but also the management, because we developed from 1989 a program on cultural management and heritage management with a couple of different masters, one on cultural management, another more specific in museology and heritage management. We have as well this PhD, and it is an interdisciplinary program. We have policy scientists, we have sociologists, we have anthropologists, we have art historians, and as well economists, just to give you that our idea is to cover from a holistic approach all the factors, all the elements that are connected to the management of the cultural field. So that's a little bit introduction. And now what I will do is try to present some of the results of the chapter project and connect them with the skills, the nature of the skills. So one of the things we developed was a reflection on the main value chain of the cultural heritage sector. So, and the result of this reflection was that it is a circular value chain. So it's a circular value chain where, as you can see, the recognition process, the preservation and safeguarding, the engagement and use, and as you can see, I highlight in yellow color because this is mainly what affects you. But all of that is connected. All of that is connected because we need as well a good research and development and education strategy. And we need all of us, all the professions of heritage, a good management and a good model of governance and policy making. So this is what makes, and you can see here, we understand heritage as a common good. So it's the new paradigm of what heritage is, or we can say improvement of heritages. So that's a little bit the approach that the program, the project is for. If we try to go down a little bit in a more detailed way, this value change. So this circular value change, what we can see here is that there are many different functions and tasks. And each one of these tasks and functions needs skills, professional skills, in order to do the best, to identify heritage in the best way, or to do ethnological recording if we talk about immaterial heritage, or the research is all over. The process is not just something that affects the first part of the value chain. It's something that we need to do in all the phases of the process. But when we talk about the preservation, the restoration, the conservation, but also the inspection, because of course there is a need for formal recognition, is the need of inspection and sanction, is as well the other functions connected to this. When we think about the different ways, because of course heritage could have many things, as you can see, so sometimes the signification process goes down. People don't care about the heritage they receive as a legacy, and they sell in the free market, but in the free market could be a new resignification. So that's something which it's interesting to understand. And at the same time, the engagement and use, so from the heritage reuse to, of course, the traditional interpretation activities. I know that interpretation is much more than that, but as you could see, in blue color I highlight the traditional interpretation activities, but I also underline different aspects in all the value chain where you interpreters are connected, because interpretation is not just something that happens in this phase of the value chain, but you are as well engaged in research, in education, in validation, in signification, because this is an holistic approach, and that is something which is quite interesting to see. Of course, you also are connected. You depends on which kind of governance model we are developing from our policies, but also inside our institutions, and the connection with the other professionals working on the field, the management, research, and education. Of course, we're also connected to other external providers, from the IT people to the security, the cleaning, the food, the legal advice, the marketing, and so on and so on. And all of that is connected and produce external benefits and external costs, both. But in the economies, we talk about externalities. Externalities could be positive externalities, but could be as well negative externalities. And what this value chain analysis allows us to understand is that in this holistic approach, there are all of us, we need to think our own job in relation to this. And of course, we have to adapt because ourselves, because life and society changing so fast. So all of these activities are impacted by powerful drivers of change. And I will talk about some of them later in my intervention, in my talk. But before going to these drivers of change, which I will go some minutes on this, I want just to explain that we are now working in the recommendations. The recommendations of the project are organized in these different 15 groups. Some of them are connected to the governance, what we need to change in the governance of the sector in order to improve this upskilling, this reskilling, this adaptation of our skills to the changes, what we need to do in order that give enough visibility to the sector so that the taxonomies, the statistics, and the classifications explains better our professions. So, because without a good taxonomy, it's impossible to recognize what the heritage sector is doing. But that's why there are some recommendations connected to that. And there are, of course, many recommendations connected to the future-proofing education and training, how we have to improve our education and training in order to fit these gaps that I was talking about. I won't go in detail, because each one of these groups have specific recommendations, but it's only for giving you some idea about what we're doing. This is still a rough scheme. We are now changing it, but it's more or less what we are doing at this time. Another aspect with developing the project was we have been asked about which are the most important fields that there is needed more engaging in innovative and emerging education and training programs. And one of the 8 fields was, as you can see, community engagement. Community engagement has recognized of one of the 8 areas there is most need of working on. So you are, of course, part of this task. And as you can see, here you can see a picture of the trip we did in Trieste a couple of days ago, and we were in this fabulous museum of only 30 square meters, something like this, but where, of course, the capacity to engage community was crucial. And engage communities through passion. You can do a lot with very little. And I think that is, the value of engaging communities. And of course, working from the communities, and the communities who empower themselves, and the communities who are able to develop. Okay, so I like it to join this picture. Okay, so we are facing crucial changes. Here I will talk about a few of them. I will later develop a couple of them only because I don't have time today to go deeper on that. But I think that what we have looking now is that society changing. The value of society is changing. We know that. We know that for what are changing sometimes in a contradictory way. There is a demand for more empowerment. At the same time, there is a lot of egoism and individualism. Values are growing up. So we have to be very careful on the analysis of the changes because they are not linear. So there are a lot of issues that we have to analyze in order to understand how we interpret heritage, how we deliver, how we engage people. I think that's something very important. Of course, we live a crucial moment of changing of the geopolitics of the planet. The global south is demanding much more visibility and being listened, and being an active actor. We see that the situation of war in different parts of the planet, and in particular in the eastern part of Europe, are changing the geostrategy. So, and we see how the different countries and the government. So, in a way, we have to have this in mind. There is all the decolonization debate, who is forcing us to rethink the way we talk about heritage, especially in the case of Europe. There is as well changes in the regulation, in the models of policy. Both, and you can see here as well this contradiction, because there is a requirement of higher transparency and accountability, but at the same time there is higher instrumentalization of heritage, provoked or used by populist political parties and governments. So how we react on this from our own profession. So when there is a deontological debate about when I'm receiving money from the government, is that affects me in the way. So that's a huge element of change. Of course, the climate change with all the consequences from heritage, the loss of heritage because the natural landscape is changing, because the content, what had sense in our community is changing. So that's also a dramatic and very fast change. And of course, the digitalization and artificial intelligence shift, and just underlying in yellow color, because I will talk a little bit about this in particular, because I was a little bit surprised that during this conference, I didn't see a lot of reflection on this. I thought it was a good idea to spend a couple of minutes on how digitalization and artificial intelligence is changing our professions, also the profession of interpretation. So, of course, tourism dynamics are also changing, not only for the COVID, but they are changing as well, because there is a mutual instrumentalization between the tourism industry and the heritage sector, and we have to be aware of that. The logics are quite different. We know that very well. So that's something that we need to reflect quite a lot. I won't spend time on this. I could be talking by hours only in each one of these drivers of change, but I only wanted to give you a general picture, and now I will devote a couple of minutes only on the digitalization issue. Digitalization is not something new. It started 40 years ago. But it's clear that it's changing progressively And now with the development of artificial intelligence and the algorithms, things are changing much faster. One of my PhD students, she's using artificial intelligence in writing her dissertation. And that's provoking a reflection as us, as supervisors, how we deal when our PhD students are using artificial intelligence. So of course, we could have a narrow approach, say, oh, this is not right, or we have to, I think we have just to have the opposite. We have to be able to use the positive aspects of that in order the knowledge, how to use it in order to improve our own human skills. So that's, I think, it's very, very important to have this. But it's clear that it's changing everything. It's changing, and I will talk about this maybe when we will talk about some of the challenges. So it's affecting the cultural practices, it's affecting the meanings of art and heritage, it's affecting, of course, a lot the labor market. The sector value change are affected as well from that. So, there is a need of policies. It's a need of policies because the current cultural policies needs as well to be updated. So our cultural policies are an old-fashioned kind of policies. We need to update them because society and these changes are changing the situation, changing the paradigms. So that's something we have to have in mind. Also, from the point of view of cultural economies, for me, it's changing the way that the analysis of the economic logics used to work. So when I am analyzing the business models that affects the cultural sector, we have to think on all the consequences of this huge change. And when I'm saying huge change, mainly I'm telling this because of the speed. I have been in the last year in 3 different workshops on this topic. I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence at all, but I have been participating in these workshops. And what 1 year ago was in the center of the debate, what it was half a year ago, or in the last meeting I was, changed totally. And that never happens to me before. To be in a field of research where the parameters change every 4 months. It's amazing. So we need to prepare ourselves on this. Okay, so just a couple of ideas on how this is changing. It's changing the ways people identify with and access and experience heritage. How heritage is recognized and preserved, how heritage institutions are managed. So this is some of the changes that are a result of that. And we can't be just isolated from this process. Because people who try to interpret heritage, they are part of this shift. So we need to rethink our profession as well from this point of view. So for one side, I think there is an increase of mediation roles, but a different kind of mediation roles. The human beings are needed. Absolutely, but need to use the new tools. Of course, that have social consequences. The gap between functional alphabets and non-functional alphabets is increasing. And that has as well a problem when we talk about the people who own powers and the people who are marginalized or easy instrumentalized. These are some of the issues we have to have in mind. So I think we need to get specialists on AI. So there is a need to talk with them to exchange ideas. So there are many, many aspects. I won't go now deeper on that, but there are many aspects that we need to reflect connected to this change. Sorry, because I decided to make a little bit some emphasis on this because I didn't listen enough on this topic. We could, of course, talk about all those changes of drive changes, excuse me, but I thought that the others are much more present in your discussions. So I saw that you are very aware of how society values are changing. I think you are very aware about how the instrumentalization of heritage is happening and what is your role on that. You have been developing quite a good deontology as a profession in relation to that, but maybe not so to some other aspects. Okay, so now I'm just going to the last slides about reflections. So this idea that we need to change, to improve our education and training, the skills connected to that. So the education of the trainers of trainers education, it's a very important issue. And I think your association is working very well in this direction, the direction of how we are multipliers. Here in this room, you are most of you multipliers in your own places, and that's very important. But that is, you need to update yourself in order to support and help the other people in the field to update as well. In this, taking into account that the job providers, we need this critical aid, the leadership, the mediation, the flexibility. These are the kind of values we need to develop. So also this idea, which you are working very well, this idea of meaningful thinking, which is very fundamental. But also, I think it's important to think about we need new alliances between the public sector, the private sector, and the communities. And that is also very important. It's important because there is a need for cooperation to understand how we affect that. So in a way, we need to sensitize not only the cultural policy makers, but mainly the other sectors, policy makers, the urban planning, the education policy makers, the tourist policy makers, and so on. Because we are convinced people, they are not. And we need to talk their language if we want to convince them. And I think that's very important. I guess some of the cases presented in the conference, there were also this idea was very present, the important role of policymakers. We have to involve them in our analysis. And but also we need a change in the leadership of heritage institutions. Sometimes our museums, our archaeological sites, our historical archive or libraries have leadership which are a little bit old-fashioned. We need to change as well their point of view. And this is only possible with dialogue. We're expressing ideas, we're presenting good practices, trying to explain how a small venue can do much more than a large one, etc., etc. So try to incorporate innovation. So how we transform creativity in innovation. That's one as well, one of the very important aspects we have to develop. Also, there is, so how this affects the interpretation of heritage? Well, probably you know much better than you. You know much better than me about this. And just here there are only a few reflections that I got, but I think maybe this is the debate. I mean, it's the questions I'm asking you, because I think they are very important. How do we break the comfortable and self-referential silos to establish a dialogue between different people in this phase of market pressure, political conditions? Because I think it's important. Maybe you could say why you wrote about this, the change of this paradigm, the participative interpretation paradigm. Okay, I take this from the lecture of yesterday. That it was this idea that the participatory paradigm, meaning that all can do interpretation. We have to reflect on that. So it's, I think, we have to think that people have different expectations. People have different assets. People have their own interests. And it's very important to focus ourselves in relation to their own position. But at the same time, we have to understand that we have people who are in a process of empowering, but there are people in a process of stigmatization or even of instrumentalization. So how we work with this idea of the participatory paradigm if we don't have in mind the different typologies of people we have to connect. And for me this is important because we could do an answer working by silos, okay, and that is what the artificial intelligence are doing, because they are allowing us through the algorithms to say, okay, this typology of people needs this kind of interpretation, this other typology of people needs this other kind of interpretation, and now we have the tools for devoting a much more specific interpretation to different people with different needs. But at the same time, if we work in this direction of maintaining the silos, we are not allowing dialogue about difference. And this is something we have to think, because the logic of the market, the logic of the technology, what people are asking us to do is to devote to them what they wanted. But I'm answering myself, this is the only way of doing, or we have to do something different. It's an open question to you. So should we generate specific content and narratives for each generational, national, social, educational, or even ideological group? Or should we force the contact between opposing viewpoints? For me, this is a key issue. I don't have an answer, but I think it's an important question. Well, and I'm just finishing with these final ideas. I think a mindset changes in both heritage institutions and professional systems. How we push our institutions, our professionals, to go to this uncomfortable situation of rethinking the profession, the skills needed, the ways of doing things, not being in a comfortable zone. And my final comment is not being afraid of technological and social changes. We need to know how to take advantage of them and how to avoid the dangers that implicitly they carry out. So I finish here because I wanted really to start a discussion about these questions. I don't have an answer. Maybe you have better answers, but I think that's something that I'm really interested to know from your side. And so thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope my ideas and thoughts give you some extra value in your reflections. So, please, there is a microphone maybe, or?
I don't know.
Or maybe just. In the bottom? Sometimes in the bottom there is a...
I think that's it now. It takes time to think at this time of Sunday.
Can
Can I go, thank you Lewis for your presentation, can I go from the general, the global, to a very particular point in relation to intangible heritage? Thinking about your slide that showed the manifestation of heritage. So working. On your slide that it was sort of that number 4 or 5 or something, the one with 100 words on that one. One of the things that I'm particularly interested in is what I would call the vernacular transmission of heritage. And I'm talking about heritage interpretation rather than heritage preservation, obviously related. In terms particularly of folk song, folk music, folk dance, folk tales, which lead on to storytelling, and most of us here as heritage interpreters would say that had one word to use better than interpretation and storytelling. So Sharp, the great folklorist of England years ago, called this folk song the music and the idiom of the people. And in terms of heritage interpretation, it is that idiom of the people that is as important as all the scientific and technical and academic and approaches. So where does that fit in? Because you've got festivals, you've got exhibitions, there's nothing there that relates to this sometimes ephemeral but terribly important element, which I would group under storytelling because that includes folk song.
Well, always, any scheme is a simplification of reality. You can have everything in a scheme. But traditional expressions was, in a way, inside what we can say is family transmissions about the way the songs, the tales, how to do textiles, etc., etc. So this is part of this. It's true that this value change, scheme is thought from the point of view of the professionals. Sometimes, because that is our project is focused on the professionals, not in the volunteers. Or when we talk about the volunteers, or when we talk about what people do at home. But from this point of view, what's interesting is to see what a professional can do in supporting these practices, these cultural practices, which are very important, absolutely relevant. So that's maybe the reason why there is not enough expression of them in this scheme, because this scheme was built from the point of view of the professionals. But of course, cultural manifestations and experiences are much broader, thanks God, of what professionals can do.
Okay,
Right here, go.
May I use the chance that I'm so close now to...
Okay.
So I'm really grateful for your lecture. I work in digital company and I provide, I'm employed there as an interpreter and the creative director also. And I'm so glad that you acknowledge this aspect as well as digitalization, okay, from, I don't know, just like physical digitalization of the products and heritage to the point of making centers more digitized and so on, and experiences, to, of course, artificial intelligence. I really observe this sector and it goes really fast. And if we are not aware what awaits us in the next few years, I think that we will have big problems, especially with realization that we are too late. So I really would like to encourage all of you to participate in this thinking, not just by saying no to digital interpretation centers and ideas, but to at least seize the chance to make most of them. And if there will be any initiative inside of Interpret Europe, I would really like to join. I would really like to invite people to participate in this question. And of course, when we say like, I notice a lot of time that people have, in this community, have aversion towards digitalization of different sectors inside of the interpretation. Don't be afraid of it. Face it and be critical about it. Say this one works well, this one doesn't. Let's talk about it. Why does one work? Why that one doesn't? And seize the day, because generations that are born into internet times, into artificial intelligence times, they won't be able to relate to old ways if we don't lead them to there. So I think this is the way how to protect the heritage, not how to spoil it. Thank you.
Take advantage of the microphone being here as well. Thank you very much for that. In one of your slides, you listed something like 8 challenges for the area. I was surprised not to see the issue of the attacks on heritage, how heritage, as it's become increasingly important at a national and local level, it's being used as kind of a non-weaponized form of conflict and war. One thinks of the Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan as being the most spectacular example, but it can even happen at a local level, where it's seen by some groups, if you attack that group, you can attack that group by attacking their heritage and the signs of their heritage. This is a way of attacking their identity. I wondered if your project is taking those sorts of issues into account.
In the number 3, I tried to express this in the sense that the instrumentalization of heritage happens in many different levels. And we have to be aware that heritage has always been a very important symbolic issue that power, all kinds of power, have historically manipulated. And this manipulation is what we have to try to counterbalance. Opening the approaches, trying to explain to the people who are easily convinced about this instrumentalization, about this simplification, with this self-identification as a member of a tribe in relation to opposite tribes, in order to explain that human beings, we are all part and we share the heritage. And when we try to understand this, is when we see that our differences are used by powerful interests in order to instrumentalize us. And finally, most common people suffers when there is war. Most common people suffers when there are violence, when someone is denying your own identity, when it's denying your myth, your cultures, your songs, your way of being. So the issue is, I think that the job of interpretation is trying to express that all human beings have a wonderful culture, and sharing is what enriches us to live in peace. I think the idea that heritage could be a wonderful weapon for peace, I think it's very, very important.
Hi, I came across Charter a few years ago, and I did. Is it to me? Okay, sorry. So after I found out about the Charter project, I pleaded with my boss for quite a long time to member, and we finally did. So I experimented a bit. With your reports, and I found something very interesting. There is a great interest in the general public towards the topics that you approach. And I even went so far as to publish the press release related to all Charter reports on the most stern communication channel I could find, because I didn't want it to be influenced by, I don't know, popularity of the president of the county council or something like that, so biased. and still, people are very interested in these topics. And I think that says a lot. And I'm gonna go from here to the cooperation between public, private, and communities, and say what I always say to my superiors. We should stop seeing and talking about heritage as something apart from society, because that has been done with policy for many, many years, and it created disasters. Heritage is very interconnected with economy. Heritage is very interconnected with community, but it was like artificially distanced from communities by means of legislation, because for most people, heritage legislation is translated into a lot of restrictions and to no benefit. And we should stop expecting common people to act against their interests, or, I don't know, just in view of serving some higher ideal, because they have to pay bills at the end of the day. So when talking about engaging communities, we should also think about making this matter for their welfare. So they need to have some economic comeback as well, not just, we can't base all this discourse on being proud of our heritage. It has to be more than that, and it has to be integrated with education and economy and many other things.
You are saying many different things. Of course, first of all, any person interested on the Charter project, here you have the web site, you can go in, there are all our documents, so please be part of the alliance. That's the first thing. Second thing, I think in the heritage sector and in general in the cultural sector, just because heritage has been many times in danger, the educated people who have been the elite, who has preserved or started doing the collections and preserving this heritage, in a way they have a very strong sense of ownership. And this sense of ownership sometimes is not enough shared by the whole society. And heritage can be used as a way of stigmatization of other. It's a way to say we are the good people and the non-educated people. So this idea, if we give heritage in the hands of the current citizen, they will destroy it. So there is a lot of, historically, had been quite a lot. This did change in the recent decades, but still it is in some of the mentality of people who feel the things that are in my archive, nobody have to use it. You have to have big barriers, good regulation. So I think there is something that we have to change in our mind and understanding that the difference between a professional and an amateur, and I'm totally in favor of amateurs, I think amateurs are very important. The difference is that a professional is someone who has developed criteria, who knows why we have to protect this and not that, because we can't protect everything, who knows how we have to interpret things in order to open the public debate based on research, based on real deep knowledge. These are the big difference. And there is not a problem of the idea that, so the self-defending approach that some professionals have, I think, could be a mistake, could be a problem. But in any case, I think we need to solve this through dialogue, through engaging people, to try to see the balance, how we balance, but it's important to integrate as much the participation of people.
Thanks a lot for this very thought-provoking presentation, and you can see with the comments and the questions and remarks that it really worked in this way. So
Thank you very much.
It was. Bettina has to do some.
No, you have to do something first.
Some announcements, but first we know that you have a stressful time ahead, so this is maybe something to for the evening to relax.
Thank you very much.
Well, I always feel a bit bad or not so good